Okay, everybody. So today, 7th of July, I'm back. Glad to see you all here, and glad to see everybody's healthy and working. So I've been trying to kind of follow up with the recent calls, but I didn't manage to listen to all of them, even switching to 1.75 speed on YouTube. So it might be that I'm not fully up to speed with all the decisions and discussions that we took so far. Excuse that, but I think we're gonna be good going forward. So I'm just looking. We have ENF here, we have TELOS here, we have Gnome there, we have Lucas here. So we have full quorum of all trains. So I'll just start to share my screen and have the mirror board for you, ready for you guys. So looking at the items, we're still on TBD name, right? So we don't mention the new name, I assume. So question is, for the branding exercise, Justin, you want to give us a short update on where we stand with the branding initiatives?
Yeah, so I think it's Friday. We have the visual identity workshop coming up. So we're getting pretty close to the end. Correct me if I'm wrong, Yves. Is it Friday? I don't know my calendar open.
Yes. Tomorrow we will be going through the visual identity for the first time, and then should be in a position to present to this group next week the visual identity. Did you forward, Justin, the messaging to the rest of the group? I don't think we've done so.
No, I'll forward that over now. Also, I've been put together sort of a wireframe of the website and started to fill that out without the visual identity ready, just to get some things ready as much as possible so we can roll it out as soon as possible, essentially.
Can we get the website eventually in WordPress? Is that what you're building it in? So that it's easy to update later on? Yeah,
I think I was going to start with Squarespace, but we could easily graduate it to WordPress. I'm pretty indifferent.
That would be awesome on our side. And I don't know if anybody else has any kind of comments on that, but it'd be great.
Yeah, I think we would prefer WordPress. We've got a lot of experience with WordPress, and just the fact that maybe different members of the coalition are available at different times. WordPress is a pretty ubiquitous platform. We run the ENF all on WordPress. We have a really good WordPress vendor that's super responsive if there's any issues, or we do all our stuff in 3 languages. So we've got a really pretty well worn in system. And so if you guys wouldn't mind doing that, then when we got if we gave Zack, say, a login from the ENF, so that when there's a need, whatever, it just makes it easier because it's by far the most ubiquitous, publishing platform.
Yeah, it makes sense.
On top of that, just the robust plugin system. And we have certain subscriptions for the ENF that sometimes they give licenses for 3 to 5 sites. So we could add like paid analytics and things like that to it.
So one question on that note. We do have the domain all set up, and I can point it at wherever, I'm happy to configure that. I haven't yet set up the Google Suite for email. I know we need to do that. And then when we start talking about WordPress and having a vendor there, we already have the domain. I added it to our AWS, which is pretty low cost. We already had it set up for the G Suite. Is there a payment method that we have, or should we discuss, a consistent payment method for all the expenses for the coalition? These are all like small one-off things, but it'd be probably good if they were all, for any net new things, all on the same payment method. I don't know, but just maybe should we discuss that? I hesitated to just jump in. I was like, okay, well, what credit card should I use to pay for G Suite? And I'm like, I'll bring that up on the call.
So there's more than just this. We have Kersten and Jeff charge their time back as well. So probably the easiest way, because it'll be hard to get the coalition to get a credit card. The easiest way would be, I mean, we can take it if you want, or you can take it, and then just monthly, or you could quarterly, however, these costs are very small. Just submit an invoice back to the coalition, and then you would we would transfer money back out of, the coalition back into TELOS in this case, if you guys were handling the cost.
Just to be clear, the invoice would actually go to the ENF. Okay. The way that we have the fund set up, right? Technically, the ENF is owner of the current treasury, but the ENF can't do anything with it because of the MSIGs. But if you recall, the ENF invoiced all of the respective chains. You guys then had an expense to the ENF that became a revenue to the ENF. So then the way to proceed would be, in your case, let's say, Jesse, you would invoice to the ENF. We would then create an MSIG with that amount. The other coalition members would approve that MSIG, and that would transfer funds out back to you. But on file, technically, right now, the funds are the ENFs.
I was thinking like, I could do that. Whatever the cost of G Suite is,
so just clarifying, because the coalition technically doesn't exist, so we can't invoice the coalition.
Right. So for the domain, I'd almost say that's negligible, the cost of the domain and the DNS, and we already had it set up, right? So we just added it to our account. We have to figure out how much of our AWS bill is allocated from that domain, which is no big deal. But for like the other things, like the one-off small ones, I was just thinking administrative overhead and the cost of transferring USDT around for small invoices. Would it make sense to just try to use the same one for all of it, so it's like one big invoice? And if it's coming, from one entity, irrelevant of who it is, like whether it's ENF or TELOS or somebody else, it's just like once a month, one large, USDT transfer and one large invoice, as opposed to like tracking 4 or 5.
Honestly, I'd almost wait until the end of the year and just invoice for the whole year, because it's just too small a number.
Yeah, I would definitely add them up, and then it can just be an invoice with itemized list. The only thing that we need to do, we as a coalition, is everybody reviews, and then if we approve, then everybody signs the effective transfer.
Right.
If it's the ENF onboarding costs, then it really becomes an internal transfer. So then there's no accounting per se, but then there still needs to be the transfer, the MSIG created, or in order to actually transfer out of that account. But then there's no invoice required if it's ENF to ENF.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out, like, saying, yeah, we can just invoice, just pay for it and invoice. We're kind of making ourselves some pain and overhead.
I would wait and accumulate. If you can cash manage the $10 for a few months, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, in our case, we tend to have like a monthly or a bi-monthly invoice for my support, so we can add up those costs to that invoice, and I think the amounts are significant enough to justify and put those costs on those if we want to. And then the question is, does ENF have like a credit card assigned that you could use to pay those regular payments?
Do not currently.
Yeah, we either. So
we're getting pretty close to having one, actually.
Yeah.
We've still
same thing here. We can actually have one, but that's another topic. But I'm thinking specifically for the Google costs, Ted, do you think we could just onboard to the SATA contract we have?
Yes, we could.
Which means then there's no credit card involved, and we can actually resolve this with no invoices to anybody.
Right. We just have to move the things over to our account. So we have a SATA contract, and it bills to our entity at the end of each month. It bills to the ENF. But then we would still need to recover those quarterly or at the end of the year or whatever, Yves.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Well, and I haven't, I have not set anything up at Google. So, I'm happy to do the legwork of setting it up. Or, somebody from the TCD that actually does that for a living could do it. They do it regularly. But it sounds like is that like a contractor that you're a service provider that manages your Google Suite?
Yeah, SATA is a VAR. Then they do professional services for Google. So you pay the same fees you would have paid to Google, but because they do professional service, Google gives them a fraction, like they make 30% or 40% of the bill, and Google keeps the rest. But you're paying standard Google pricing, but instead of doing the deal with Google, you do it with SATA, SADA. They're the largest VAR for Google. And then you actually have, an account rep, customer support, and all of that stuff. We also have an account with AWS. So, I mean, we could put this in AWS. That bills directly to the ENF, at the end of the month.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, maybe that's a good plan for the Google. If I don't know if you want to, how you do that work with them. And we've already transferred the domain. I would say it's probably not a good idea to do another transfer. We're already paying. We've paid for at least a year of that and all, but I could, whatever they need to get set up, they just give you a simple instruction, like the DNS records they want created. And then I'd be happy to create those DNS records and just give them whatever they need in terms of direction.
The best way to host, in my opinion, and this may sound a little stupid, but if you kind of do a little researching, the best way to host a WordPress site is either through like GoDaddy or Automatic. They both have GoDaddy has.
Yeah, I'm not talking about. I'm just talking about purely the domain registration and DNS.
I mean, we only renew that once a year, so, and that's, I don't know. I guess that was pretty expensive. That was an expensive domain, but it's not going to be that expensive to renew it. It's like $12 a year to renew it once we own it, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying it's already set up, and usually, you're not going to have.
So we don't need to move that.
So if you just tell SADA like the domain name and that you want whatever we decide, like emails to set up, and they can go set it up, and I would imagine they just give you like, okay, could you please, create this TXT record and MX record.
Yep. Yeah, it's obviously a lot easier if you're going to set up Google. If you're going to set up Google Workplace with email addresses and all that, it's a lot easier if you put it in Google domains, but it's doable when you have not.
Okay, and then for WordPress, yeah, I totally agree. We ran WordPress before, and we used the hosted one, and it was very easy to set up, right? So, whatever you recommend for that, since you guys seem to have a strong instinct, we can just
Yeah, whenever you're ready, we could, I'm happy to talk with you guys, help you get that all going. Yeah, we just have a vendor that, like, we did a lot of special stuff. Anything we publish goes out Chinese, Korean, and English at the same time. So we had some really unique needs, and this vendor has been flawless. They've just been amazing.
Okay, well, maybe we can take it offline, but if you just want to let me know, or maybe you ask SADA on an email or something and CC me just so I can set up whatever DNS records they need, and we can have them, create that.
So are what we deciding right now in the call is that we're going to have, we're going to add and I don't know if I can say the word, for the new coalition site, we're going to add the Google Workplace email accounts there. We'll do it through SATA.
I believe that's what we were saying. Instead of trying to pay for it with a credit card, if it's the same price.
We probably need that to be a separate, and we can probably do it under the same contract. I'm meeting with her again next Thursday, my account rep. We probably need to do that under a separate domain. And so it'll be like, we'll have them all under the same contract, but it'll be broken out because it is a separate organization, right? And we can't just confuse the EOSnetwork.com and the coalition emails. It'd be confusing.
Yeah, you don't want them intermingled at all.
And we're probably not going to make that many coalition emails, right? I mean, would we all also have coalition emails? Because it would be a whole separate inbox to go check. Or is this just going to be for like info and contacts and stuff like that?
I think so. I think it's just info and contacts, and any, we do need that outbound like presence, right? So when we reach out to different outlets, need to verify ourselves and have that.
I'll take that. I won't know any. I probably won't. I think my meeting with her is Thursday morning, so I may have a status by next week's call.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think we're in any huge rush.
Okay.
And that'll make it easier. Yeah. Like, I don't think anybody needs any individual ones. We probably could just do forwarding, and I don't know if you've used Google Groups, but managing a group email is pretty simple, right? So,
yep. Okay, I will take that for next week.
And then as far as the WordPress thing, it sounds like Justin's got some work to do, but once we're closer on that, we will ask if you recommend a particular WordPress hosted provider, and we'll set that up.
And then, or Justin, are you just going to have a splash page initially? Because the splash page doesn't matter where the splash page is. It's once we go beyond the splash page where we might want a blog, or we want a few different pages, we want to be able to edit them. That's when we should go to WordPress.
Yeah, it'll just be a single page to begin, maybe some links to GitHub and other things. So yeah, I don't mind doing it in WordPress from the start, but there's not going to be too much rework if we did start from something else either way.
Yeah. If it's just a single page, that's not a big deal. So it's up to you. I'm happy to work with you at any point whenever you're ready. If you want to start on WordPress or not, it's okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. As far as I recall, there was a plugin that's called WordProof that's actually possible to kind of put the information on chain and hash it on chain. So that would probably be a nice addition for us to do, because I know that Sebastian's deployed at least on TELOS. I'm not sure about other chains though.
And EOS and maybe one or two other chains. Yeah.
We meet with him every 2 weeks. We meet with Sebastian. I think we have a good relationship with Sebastian.
Oh, that's cool, because it's a while ago since I communicated with him. So, but this would be nice to kind of use that WordPress plugin and then log everything on chain and have some. It's a nice to have feature, but it's obviously it does fit for a coalition that works on blockchain.
Yeah, we should actually be adding it to our site. We've been a little busy just getting the site working correctly with all 3 languages and everything. So that is my next meeting with Sebastian, we'll ask him how much brain surgery it's going to take to put that plugin in on our ENF website.
Okay, cool.
There's 2 A's in Sebastian in the second part. So I guess there's 3 A's in Sebastian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so if you could check him, maybe he wants to have this project on his scorecard too.
I'm
would
sure
be nice.
He will. I'm surprised he hasn't pushed me sooner.
Cool. To discuss. Very nice. Cool. Okay. Then there was the IBC. There was the Supra token discussions last week. So, is there anything open that needs to be discussed on today's call regarding this, or is there any background discussions that have been ongoing since then?
So 2 things there. One, it's called the Supra token, SUPRA. Although it's going to be super, that's not its name. But no, I think we can close that card. There's nothing really to discuss at this stage on this. The majority of the discussion, and I think where we should be focusing the time today, unless there are really any other items, is to continue down the path of finalizing the IBC milestones, which we still don't have, because the IBC milestones will, which we do have for faster finality, but we don't have for IBC, will guide the payment schedule and the vesting schedule that I guess we need in order to determine the final parameters for payment from the coalition to the UX team on how that's going to be worked out, so that we can put that formally in an agreement.
Okay, so
one thing, could I jump here? The last call, I asked this question. Gnome, you weren't present to answer and speak to it, and Yves, I think you did your best, but acknowledge you don't know the details. I missed the IBC presentation. I don't know if we ever got a formal RFP presentation, but we got kind of a high level of the tech. Are we going to have a chance to see the level of detail and description that we saw for faster finality for IBC, or do I need to ask like my kind of technical detail questions now of Gnome before?
It's kind of both. So the difference is IBC in UX's case is already done. And so instead of getting them to, and I think we talked about this maybe 3 weeks ago in the coalition call, instead of getting them to do to get the coalition to write an RFP and then to get UX to bid on IBC, seeing as their IBC solution is already live, already functional, already built, what we had decided to do was to get a walkthrough of their current solution and then to provide comments as to what it is we'd like to see added or changes made. So that's the call that I believe you didn't attend. I think at this point it's 3 weeks ago or so. And that's the continuation of that 3 week ago call was then held this Tuesday, which you did attend. So we don't have an official bid or official RP because the solution itself is already built. So we decided to then just go the route of, okay, what's there and what would we like to add in order to be where, as the coalition, we'd like to adopt that solution. And then so we've done this, I guess, on 2 occasions now. So there's been some modification, and that's the documentation. Maybe, Guillaume, you want to share it again. That will form essentially the base for the milestones and for the roadmap of IBC. And that's what now we need to finalize, is putting that out in a format that's very milestone looking. And then any other concerns that you would have with what they've presented. Yes. Okay.
And I guess I should have been clear. I don't need to see the RFP format. That's not my concern. I'm more, and Gnome, you weren't here, but I'll just throw it out there. Like I asked, is this a hub and spoke model? Is this purely for tokens, or is it all kinds of messaging between chains? And does the messaging have to go through a single network like, UX, or are we getting tech that could be used where there's not a single point of failure or a single bottleneck? I think I kind of got an answer, but kind of didn't. And so maybe those are my concerns. Like what is the coalition paying for in terms of a generic tool versus a more network specific implementation?
So for these questions, I believe we discussed them quite at length on the Tuesday call. So I don't know if I think we have a recording of that. I would maybe refer you to that recording.
But I thought Jesse was on the call Tuesday.
I was on a call on a Tuesday, but it was the one that we swapped out scalability for discussing things. I haven't been able to attend the other.
Oh, okay, so you weren't
2 days ago.
Oh, it wasn't this week. Gotcha. I thought, Jesse, you were on the call this week, this Tuesday, 2 days ago.
Yeah, so I must have just missed out on that as well.
Right, because like all these questions were discussed quite in detail, so it's probably easier for you to just listen to that call on 1.75 speed, and you can get your answers there. So, one thing though is I offered, and I'd like to reiterate, I offered the TELOS team a one-on-one session at any point if you guys have additional questions, because some of that was discussed in calls where I think there were few, if any, representatives from TELOS. So that offer still stands if you want to have a I said one-on-one, but I mean like just anyone from TELOS with myself and any other person from our team that's relevant. Happy to also do that if that's preferable for you guys.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I need to then watch that call, or listen and watch that call, and then I'll be able to kind of speak to my opinion on everything.
And for TLDR, Jesse, because I guess we can fast track. Yes, it is hub and spoke. For example, we wouldn't need to go through UX. We could just do TELOS to EOS. We could do TELOS to WAX directly. And it is very much kind of a plug and play type of model that doesn't require an intermediary, being UX in this case, or whoever else. It can be, it is a direct.
It's not
hub and spoke. Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
Hub and
Sorry,
spoke
not
typically means
hub and
that-
spoke. Yes,
exactly.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
The way that I was interpreting hub and spoke was being customized. Anything can happen. But yes, you're right. It's
Hub,
the opposite.
hub and spoke, meaning everything must go through, like the spokes must go through the hub. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll watch it and understand. I just want to make sure, we're, as a coalition, and the TBD named software that we're kind of promoting here is something that if somebody wanted to launch private private network of networks or whatever, that they're not going to have to deal with any of our public networks. Or
correct.
Similarly, if one of our networks fails, then obviously the tokens of that network kind of suffer with it. But anything else that's been done, by other networks can live on, I guess would be the thing. But okay,
just to also give you the short answers, this applies also to any action that can happen on a blockchain. So it's not limited just to token transfers and NFT transfers. It's really anything. And then your other question regarding central point of failures, we've designed that solution to have absolutely no central point of failure. In fact, it might be even like better, as Aaron was suggesting, to kind of reintroduce a little bit more quote quote centralization to help with the user experience, as Aaron was suggesting. For example, having the ability to use services like Fuel to perform half of the transactions that are required. Like there's 2 transactions required per action proof, one of which could potentially be handled by a centralized service in order to improve the user experience. So the design as it stands right now has absolutely zero central point of failure.
And there's no off-chain. It's like I as a user, like, issue a transaction on the source and then prove it on the destination with my own resources on both networks, and that's
correct
about it. Or I use Fuel, to your point. Or
the only thing you need really is a history solution to gather the information that's required to generate the proof. So far, we've built it with support for diffuse. We also confirmed that support for Firehose is already present. So we already have everything that we need on Firehose to do this. We also spoke to Igor, who's building Hyperion. He said these would be also relatively simple changes to make to Hyperion. Then a pending discussion to have with Aaron to add support for Robo. And then I think we discussed as well with the ENF engineers the possibility of having even vanilla EOS, Node EOS, like HTTP plugin, expose short-lived APIs that would allow us to generate these proofs. All of this should be quite doable, and will be actually part of the second phase of our proposal. The first phase being the solution as we have it today, but then as part of our second additional work that we would propose doing, it would be also like to support all history solutions to allow them to provide what's needed to generate these proofs, as well as modified Node EOS HTTP plugin to also be able to support that directly in its core, basically.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think maybe I don't need to listen to the call then, because that's about it. And one of my questions was, maintenance of infrastructure, if there is any. It sounds like there's not. So maybe that effort goes into kind of what you and Aaron were talking about. I read the conversation on Telegram as well when you had it. So, those types of things kind of replace the off-chain oracle. Even if it's a trustless oracle, there isn't one, right? It's the user themselves. So,
correct.
Making that easier for the user to accomplish that role of relaying between the two. Cool. Well, I'm happy with that.
Cool. So I guess just to maybe on my end, I took essentially like the notes that kind of wrote down on Tuesday's call. And I just modified the document a little bit to include these. So I bumped the document link in the Scalability Plus group. So if anyone is not in that group, just let me know. I'll try to share it in the coalition. Oh, I think, you should be able to view that document, anyone with the link. So yeah, in the Scalability Plus group, you should have access to the document, which outlines basically the main requirements as they stand today, and has essentially like we presented them and then presented to the rest of the coalition. So there's probably like I'd say like it's been already a few times that we go over these. So hopefully, if anyone else has any questions or any additional feature requests, would be a good time to reach out to me and let me know. Otherwise, I would start working on these with these notes, these bullet points, and create a bit more of a kind of formal proposal, as well as milestones and like a little bit of breakdown of the work. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And for those who really have questions, yes, the calls have been recorded. We've gone quite deep into this. I think we have maybe 3 hours, 4 hours worth of calls on this that went really deep. So if there's anything else, then obviously feel free to reach out to Guillaume. If not, Guillaume, if you could start working on the breakdown for milestones as you did for faster finality, that would be great.
Perfect. So yeah, I think I've got my work cut out for me. So as far as I'm concerned, we're set.
Were there some initial discussion, because that's obviously in the category of this has been built already, and we might want to think about what the recharge model for a component is that has been built. So did you discuss actual funding of this solution earlier?
Yes. And so we did talk about last week, essentially, during the call. I guess they're no longer being in a void, but the total that was being requested by UX for faster finality as well as IBC was $3.8 million. And then the mechanism by which we would pay that $3.8 million is what we went at lengths to talk about last week. So I just won't rehash everything. Then that will be put on paper, presented alongside the faster finality milestones, presented alongside the IBC milestones, which are now going to be drafted, so that the coalition members can see alongside as well the ratios, which I did share in the call earlier this week, in the chat earlier this week, so that everybody can then go back to their respective chains with a full-on, essentially, proposal of what is being asked of them and whether or not they approve. But so far, there was high-level approval in a certain way of continuing down this path with what had been presented to date.
I would like to also add that following the discussion we had on Tuesday, where we went over additional, feature requests, we're happy to keep our proposal at the same amount. So like
so nice of you.
Right. No, but I mean, these are actually
yes,
not that big, not that big modifications to what we already have. And we believe that they will also increase the value of the solution for everyone, us included. So we're happy to keep the same price tag for the whole solution with these features.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So for everybody else, and obviously this will be posted because it's recorded, the original ask was $5 million, essentially, and we've negotiated down to 3.8 in a very specific manner as well. And so that some capital is locked, some of it is vested, some of it is accessible, all of it is dispersed through milestones. IBC and faster finality are very different. So IBC, there's an initial in a way CapEx, but that is taken from funds that are made accessible by EOS. So all of that will be laid out. But one thing that is very different from anything that we received to date elsewhere is that this is a comprehensive, over the next 12 to 18 months proposal. It is not just here are a few bullet points and we'll deal with documentation, we'll deal with maintenance, we'll deal with whatever later outside of this. The proposal is end-to-end 12 to 18 months worth of work, milestone based, in a very, very specific fashion. So it's quite comprehensive. And it does not tap into the current treasury that we have. And so it makes, again, available the coalition to choose a few other priorities outside of these two, continuing down the path of even more deployment, feature development and deployment without necessarily causing financial strain on any of the coalition members. So it's a huge win if we can get this in a place where we formally approve it and start the process. And Guillaume, should that be the case, because it will take a few weeks before we actually settle, I'm guessing, on the final agreement, do you still believe that it is realistic that each of the coalition chains would be in a position to deploy, at least on a test net, the IBC in the next few weeks, and then potentially even on the connecting the mainnet over the next few months?
Yeah, I believe so. The only exception, or the only one that I'm not sure is TELOS, because as far as I know, they don't support diffuse as it stands. So we did confirm that Firehose is enough to has all the information to generate the proofs. And we're happy to also prioritize this, basically like the proof generation using Firehose, which I believe now ES Nation runs on TELOS. But yeah, that's other than that, like all the other three chains, UX, EOS, and WAX all have diffuse, which is our the history solution that we've built first. So with this caveat, yes, the answer is yes.
Hello. Does that answer your question, Kersten?
Yes, it does to an extent. So, but I didn't follow up on the point of the actual funding or like breakdown of the cost, because as far as I understand, is that still based on like this one rate per hour per day? That's not broken down into different skill sets?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me attempt to answer it. So when I think I know, but if I'm off track, stop me at any time. So in the original proposal for faster finality, this doesn't apply to IBC because we had never gotten a breakdown of faster finality cost in the same way that we've gotten of IBC cost in the same way that we've gotten for faster finality. In the faster finality bid, we've gotten a breakdown of where that just short of $2 million, where that was coming from, per function, per hour, number of hours, etc. I don't recall if you were in the call where we went over all of that. Everybody except UX was in that call, so that WAX and TELOS reviewed this. We did modify the numbers, the hourly rates, to a point where we were all comfortable in making a counter proposal to UX. That amount was just above basically $1.6 million. So we all agreed, as in TELOS, WAX, and EOS agreed that this would be our counter proposal pitch to UX. When we did the counter proposal pitch to UX, we didn't just put faster finality in a void. We presented that. We presented the justification as where we got to $1.6 million instead of $2 million. But we then also approached it and gave the proposal of how we would pay that alongside wanting to have IBC. And so that's where what we knew of IBC was a $3 million ask. What we knew of faster finality was a $2 million ask. What we eventually landed on is $3.8 million. So split that however you like. This is what we're going to figure out, but it is likely the $2.2 million going to IBC, $1.6 million going to faster finality. Faster finality, those milestones and those milestone payments are already determined. So the numbers just need to be updated now that let's say the 1.6 is it changes obviously the amounts per milestone payment as compared to when it was 2. The $3 million that was for IBC is now, I guess, effectively $2.2 million. Of that $2.2 million, the idea was that 2/3 would be coming up front because we're essentially buying something that's already there. And so that amounts to something like $1.425 or $1.433 million. But then how that comes about, so is it in EOS tokens and TELOS tokens and WAX tokens? That's where then we also went into further detail of the breakdown, the modified and updated ratios, the ways in which those tokens would be delivered, whether or not they're vesting schedules, those that aren't invested schedules, which ones are they, for which project. And so all of this is going to be coming out in a formal written package. That way there's no confusion. And then the respective chains will be able to go back with that package and really then make a decision as to whether or not they approve that. Having said this, in theory, the 3 chains have, in theory, approved the general idea behind this. But in order to go back and let's say formally cast a vote, what we left off with last week was let's put the pen to paper, be able to present it tangibly to everybody so that we have something to sign off on. But in theory, that is what's already been quote unquote approved. Does that answer what you were asking? Which is more than just the 1.6, which yes, did take into account the hourly rates, but it wasn't presented in a void.
It does more, yes.
But it doesn't. It does more, but doesn't.
It's more clear to me now.
Is there something that's still missing?
No, it's more clear to me now. I was just I was just under the impression, and that's what I had as a feedback from our team was that we had like one daily rate that was assigned or hourly rate, which was like $300 whatever dollars, which would be applying to like as a fixed cost for the whole team, independent
gotcha.
of what Chris said.
So
that was kind of where I'm getting at. So
okay, so I can comment on. Then so in the call where everybody except UX was present, so the 3 chain except UX was present, we did talk about 2 different ways in which we could approach the counter offer and or accept the faster finality bid. One of the ways was the way in which it was presented, which was an hourly rate with a certain amount of hours, but that we don't know if effectively that'll be that amount of hours. But that was one way of doing it. And we ended up going down that route, but at a reduced hourly rate. And like I said, the total reduction was from 2 million to 1.6 million. So roughly 20, slightly different numbers, but roughly 20% reduction, which applies roughly 20% reduction hourly rate cost down the board. The other way of countering or approaching this was to not take that hourly rate and hours for granted in the way that they were presented, but instead ask basically timesheets as we go forward, set an hourly rate for those functions, ask timesheets, and really micromanage this. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wax and Telos, who are on the call, that way of approaching this was essentially abandoned. We chose not to go down that route. And then all of this became somewhat moot when we didn't just present the faster finality as a void, but we also approached it with faster finality and IBC, and in the way that that would actually be paid with the vesting, with the tokens, with the ratios changed, etc. So the route which we took, Kersten, ended up not being what you just suggested, but yes, that was discussed.
Okay. That's fine. So I will have to restart my Mac because it really does strange things. So I'll be back in a second. I'm sorry for that.
And Lucas has to go. Thank you, Lucas.
Thanks, guys.
And Kersten is still here. Is there anything else then on the agenda for today? I'm guessing Kersten is gone, but for some reason he still appears here.
He said his Mac was frozen, so I have he had to just kill it.
I have one more question for clarity. I don't think it's been addressed. So the upfront cost is 3.8 million. I know that there's a breakdown.
No, that is not the case. The upfront cost is not 3.8 million.
You're right. 2/3. Yeah, there's other breakdowns. My question is the ratio used at the beginning of this contract, which is paid in milestones over a period of time based on those milestones being achieved, would we recalculate the ratios throughout that process, or would we lock in the ratio based on all of the different market cap and other factors initially and keep that locked in through all the payments?
The latter, because the funds wouldn't be payments. The funds would already be in the treasury, vesting over time. And I believe it was Douglas that mentioned, in order for UX to be able to leverage the function of having that treasury without actually being able to leverage that treasury, we were open to the idea of creating some type of LP token, which would enable them to be able to do AMM with the funds without actually touching the funds. So the funds would already be sent. All of it would be in the treasury, and they would unlock as per milestones. And I say that very loosely because some of it is CapEx at the onset. Some of it are going to be made available from the onset, and that would be, give or take, roughly 66% of that $2.2 million. And that's in EOS tokens, not in TELOS or WAX tokens.
Okay, so to re-clarify my initial statement, so I said payment up front, but it's not a payment because it's milestone based. The transfer of funds is all up front into kind of like a vesting escrow mixed account, but everyone's paying the totality of the contract up front into a specific account.
But they only become accessible when we release them as per milestone. Correct. Having said that, though, this is what we're talking about, and this is what at a high level we've decided to proceed with. But we haven't formally made this decision because we haven't formally presented all of this on paper to each respective chain to be able to approve. But once, I guess, from your side, or what's relevant to you, let's say for communications, once that paper is written down, all of those details you will have very black and white, easy to understand.
Got it.
I guess are we trying to talk about what those details are going to be? Because I guess I'm now a little unclear on the difference between milestones and vesting in terms of the transfer. Because you suggested that the ratios are fixed up front because it's all transferred at once, but it's actually, there's vesting, which we talked about going on through LP tokens.
So the milestones are for the actual work being delivered, so that if UX doesn't deliver the milestone, they don't do the work, they don't get the tokens, right? They don't get paid if they don't do the work. That's what I mean by milestone based. And the milestones for faster finality, those have already been shared. And what Gnome and Darren now need to go back and do is take the document which they've shared in the Scalability Plus group, which stemmed out of the few calls we've had about IBC specifically, and then transform that into milestones. And then assign payments to each, which then we would review similarly to what we did with the faster finality. The difference being, though, is that IBC, a portion of IBC, roughly 2/3, would be paid upfront because we're deploying an already existing solution. The remaining 1/3, that's what would be then dripped out through the milestones, which they will be working on presenting to us. The upfront payment would likely be EOS paying, so that it unlocks capital to them right away, whereas the milestone remaining 1/3 payments would be TELOS and WAX's share. And that meaning that over the next year or so, some of those tokens are unvesting while the milestones are being achieved, but it doesn't cause downward pressure on your token because they will not be selling those tokens. Those tokens are effectively vesting and locked. And similarly for faster finality, as the milestones are hit and payments are made available to them, or funds are being unlocked to them, they're vesting to them, the tokens that they would be selling would be the EOS tokens, because that does not impact our liquidity so much, but it does so more for TELOS and WAX. So that's the entirety of, the benefits of the chains is you're able to, as TELOS, if I'm speaking from TELOS, you're able to give an amount, but not having that amount creating downward pressure on your token while still getting the benefits of the product that is being delivered and the work that you're able to benefit from day one.
Right. No, I get that part. I guess you're saying milestones investing kind of in the same statement. I'm trying to understand. Let's just keep it real simple. Pretend there's just one chunk of work and there's 2 milestones, 6 months and 12 months. To complete, right? So at 6 months, some milestone is met. At that point, we would then transfer the tokens to what we talked about, was transferring them over into liquidity pools on the UX DEX, the AMM, right? And then they'd be locked there and they would also be vested. So we have milestones where, okay, you did the work, you earned the tokens, and you have vesting, meaning, well, they're your tokens, you're going to get them 100% guaranteed, you're going to get them, but over a period of time. So it feels like we're kind of conflating milestones and vesting. And I'm not sure when we do write this down, when the vesting would start versus the milestone, and when the transfer over to, have them participate in liquidity pools would start versus milestones being completed. Like they're kind of a blur there to me.
Do you mind then if we, as we had, I guess, agreed to do, that we put this to paper so that way there's no confusion as to what it is and what that would look like, and the actual payment schedule and the vesting schedule and the milestone schedule. That way there's no confusion. Is that okay? Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just thinking we could talk through it at a high level here so that when you put it on paper, it's a formality, not a beginning of the conversation. But. Okay, sure. So let's separate the two. Let's talk about IBC for example.
And I think irrelevant of the numbers, just like this strategy, were we talking the tokens and they go into the liquidity pools when the milestone is met, right? So they don't go into the liquidity. We don't take everything into the liquidity pools before the work's done. Is that an accurate statement?
The idea was to put everything at the onset, but those, similarly to what we've done with the treasury for the coalition right now, all of the tokens are in the treasury, but they're not accessible to anybody because there's an MSIG.
Right.
Yeah, technically with all of the vesting, it could all be, we don't need block by block vesting. We could have milestone based and just use MSIG for everything. So you put it into an LP, you get the LP tokens back and put those into an MSIG contract, for example.
Right. And but see, and I'm just, maybe I'm being pedantic and I'm trying to get us to just align on the words that we're using, but vesting to me means over a period of time. I've participated in a number of vesting schedules in traditional, software startups. You have a vesting schedule over this period of time. You're going to get these, shares as long as you still work at the company, right? That's to me what vesting is. Milestone, is more like, okay, when you reach this point, you've actually done the work, you've earned this asset, and it's going to be released to you. So it sounds like we're using the term vesting instead of milestone.
So,
like
no,
the trigger is not
both.
a time
there's
period.
Both. So one part is to ensure that your tokens cannot be sold. So those tokens will vest. And one part is to ensure that during the milestones, once those milestones are attained, that UX does have access to tokens that it can sell in order to fund operations, and those would be the EOS ones. So the EOS tokens would not be vested, but they would be released upon milestones. The TELOS and WAX tokens, as much as possible, this is how we need to, I guess, define the payment schedule, would not be needed in the milestones portion because they could be vesting over time, if that makes sense. So that we delay the potential downwards pressure on TELOS and WAX token as far as possible.
Okay, I just feel like if we're going to put it in paper and it's going to be very clear what we're going to do when, it needs to, I mean, if the vesting schedule is 12 months and the milestones are 12 months, the vesting schedule is pointless, right?
So I think just to maybe add to what Yves was saying, it might be a different way to look at it that may help to understand. But most of that discussion regarding vesting of these tokens stems from the IBC component of our proposal, considering that we are asking for 2/3 of the amount upfront. What Yves suggested was that we would essentially get the 2/3 in EOS at the beginning, and then the remaining 1/3 for IBC would be paid as the milestones over time are delivered. So it's in a sense, it is both milestones and vesting, because normally it would have been 2/3 of all the tokens from all the chains at the onset, and then 1/3 as these milestones would have been met in as we delivered the additional work for IBC. But since the Yves and the ENF accepted to basically front load the 2/3 at the beginning, now the milestones become essentially like some sort of a vesting schedule in a sense with regards to WAX and TELOS, because they are not basically being paid at the onset, but rather they're being delayed and aligned with the milestones. So this is at least like how I interpret it, and what's my understanding of it is. So this is how I think it probably reconciliate the two terms.
Okay,
so just to put a little bit of specific numbers in there, because it may help. The $3.8 million, according to the current ratios that were shared, would be split as such. EOS would pay $2.5346 million, so $2,534,600. TELOS, in your case, you would pay $307,800 worth of TELOS tokens. WAX would pay $957,600. However, all of the tokens that would be upfront would all be EOS.
Right.
And so EOS will be sold.
I understand.
But then over the 18 months, that's when then the TELOS tokens would be unlocked. Having said that, you would be sending your $307,800 worth of EOS at TELOS right away. And then in order to unlock those for UX to be able to leverage the fact that they are sitting on a treasury, that's when Douglas mentioned we could do an LP token.
So Yves, I understand all this, and the numbers are insignificant. And to be honest, I'm not really personally worried in either case. I'm just trying to make sure we all understand what is going to happen when, so that we can put it on paper. So you're saying that those tokens move over right away, the 1/3 for IBC, and I guess in theory, if we're applying the same logic, the everything, right, the milestones for faster finality as well are included in this large one sum. So all the tokens move over right away, and in this theory, there's not, the 18 months is suggestive, and it's probably going to take that long for faster finality. But I guess my point is, if they complete them early, the 18 month is just an estimate for the milestones. It's not a vesting schedule, right? So let's say Gnome exercises his superpowers and in 3 months, everything's done. Those LP tokens go out, right? So it's a milestone. It's the time. Vesting in my brain is always a time-based thing, right? Milestones is an accomplishment-based thing. So vesting, it just really pollutes my, little timeline in my brain, because it's 100% milestone driven, right? It's if the tokens are locked until milestones are reached. The tokens go immediately to be traded on an AMM on the EOS network, which is to their benefit, and is that's totally fair because they're doing the work, and there's compromises being made. I'm not speaking against any of that. I'm just saying that the tokens immediately go in that AMM for liquidity pools. The LP is locked in an MSAG controlled by us until milestones are met. Is effectively what we're talking about here.
And I'll throw another curveball, because yes, what you just described, yes. But then and that's why I was laying out the numbers. The first milestones that will be met, I don't think they'll do it in 3 months, but let's say they can finalize everything in 12 months, which is maybe more realistic, but I still don't think it is. But let's just say it's 12 months. The first payments would still be eating to the EOS, right? So even though milestone 1 is attained, let's say in a month from now, it's not necessarily unlocking the TELOS and WAX tokens. It would be front-loading all of the EOS being made accessible. And so in this example of 3 months that you mentioned, for example, it is possible that only in the 3rd month is when TELOS and WAX tokens are made accessible.
Got it, right. And
because the total sum is still very much in EOS, and then the first tokens to be unlocked would always be the EOS ones. So it's delaying the unlocking of TELOS and WAX tokens. So yeah, I don't think it's realistic the 3 months, but maybe 12 months. It is possible that really your tokens are in effect locked for the first 9 months.
Right. No, okay, I get it. And I just wanted to make sure that in my head and what we're expecting to see on paper is very clear in terms of how it's like what the triggers are, what the mechanics are of moving the assets around, when the assets get moved, when releases happen. And this all comes back and supports the whole concept that Douglas suggested originally, which is that the numbers are cut on day one, right? We at that point, we establish the token amounts. We probably no longer are discussing dollar amounts. We're now discussing token amounts. And we would, establish, like you said, the milestone amounts, the percentages of the tokens that get released at those milestones, and the EOS go out first as we hit those milestones. And then once the percentage exceeds what EOS has contributed in a token amount, then we would move on to like probably a 50-50 split of TELOS and WAX or something getting released at those subsequent milestones, right?
Yes.
Something like that.
Correct. Yes, something like that.
Then I can understand it all in my head, and hopefully it becomes easier to put on paper. And you can use the word vesting now. I'll just note that I shouldn't put any definition behind vesting that I'm familiar with.
So I guess the idea is it's in a way an effective vesting. If realistically we're talking about an 18-month timeline, just running the numbers very quickly, it seems as though TELOS and WAX tokens wouldn't be touched for about a year.
And bear in mind also, there is a component to at least faster finality and possibly to IBC as well that will be entirely time-based. For example, the way we structure the milestones for faster finality is there's a delivery at some point of the functional solution to be deployed on the jungle testnet, and then following that deployment, there's an SLA that kicks in that essentially provides 6 months of help and support to the chains to upgrade their respective mainnets, and then another 6 months following the end of that 6 month is another SLA for any bugs or any issues that may be encountered that need fixing. So essentially, there's at least a 12-month period that is essentially like hard coded in the whole thing.
Yeah, I understand. I was using the 3 months just to prove the 18-month or whatever. It's truly milestone and achievement based. But to your point, one of the achievements is 12 months of support, which then becomes fixed times. Right? So yeah. I guess one other thing I would point out, if we're drawing up a contract and stuff on paper, so we're all clear and nobody has any like future gotchas. Like we're talking about moving tokens to an AMM that obviously has to be released. I know you've been working hard and you say imminence, but obviously it has to be a place to move them, right? So once that has a home and we can move the tokens there, and then there are LP tokens for those actual tokens that are in the pools, I would assume, unless you've done some miracle that Bancor claimed, and obviously we've seen what happened, there is like impermanent loss. There are, the agreement is that you will get a percentage release of the vesting tokens of the LP tokens at these milestones, right? Like we just want to be very clear. We might move.
Yeah, it's the LP tokens at vest. It's exactly.
Yeah, like we might move 1 million TELOS or whatever it is into the pool, and then 10 months later when they're finally released or whatever, start releasing. If everybody's traded for them, your LP might actually be 500,000, right? That's impermanent loss.
Yeah, that's obviously that's the kind of, I guess that's the risk both ways. I mean, it's quite it's a kind of nice solution in one way, because it doesn't, the market decides which goes up and which go down. We don't have any control over that.
It could be the other way too, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's I mean, it's not for this discussion, but
I'm just saying, like
the term impermanent loss is so kind of misunderstood. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't want the
balances
of the contract to say change. You'll get 1 million tokens at the end of this full cycle, and we come to find out the market decided that they're now 500,000. We want to make sure the terms are clear.
Yeah, I think the terms should specify that the token amounts are the initial balances for the kind of like special LP token. So it's quite clear.
I'm just trying to avoid any ambiguity for the future.
Yes, now it's going to be the fun part of actually writing all of this down in a way that makes sense and that everybody understands, and that legally is very clear, so there are no issues.
You said that was fun?
No, yeah, exactly. Yes, if you didn't sense the sarcasm, I'm going to say there was tremendous sarcasm there. Because you're right that in order to write this and think of everything as you just mentioned, it's not going to be relatively easy.
One question though that I'd like to understand. So obviously, if we all hope that the market is turning green very soon and is being more bullish, so well, that's obviously a bad word in this group anyway. So it's getting more green, and the value of those tokens increases significantly. Do we have any plan? I mean, is that then our treasury is just increasing in value? And
we're not actually sending this to the treasury, right?
Sorry?
We're not sending this to the treasury. So that's the bet that essentially UX is taking, is that it's not selling your tokens and it hopes that it goes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if
the advantage to you
is
if the opposite happens, which is basically what we were stuck with the coalition. We had this very discussion a few months back. Some people were reticent. We're going to send $2 million. It's going to be worth 10 million by the time we use it. Yeah, we're pretty happy now that we did the opposite. But yes, UX takes that bet, right? So UX then sits on a pile of tokens that it hopes will be worth more, and so that it hopes the work that is doing will be worth more. But they're taking that risk.
And if the utility of those tokens, some allotment of them will be potentially used in the index token, the Supra token. So if it increases in dollar value, that's just more liquidity for everyone's tokens in that pool.
Yeah. Okay. Understood.
But the advantage there is that we get the work right away, right? Especially in terms of IBC, we get the solution instantly. Whereas for the rest, if they end up not doing the work, we get the tokens back. And so, yes, if the market went up, you would get back tokens that are valued more as well. You're putting tokens aside, but getting the work now. And if the work isn't delivered, you're getting those tokens back.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay.
And just to give an idea, at current rates, because then it will make it a little bit more real for people, it would be roughly 10.6 million WAX tokens, 1.8 million TELOS tokens.
Yep.
Just to give a rough idea. And about 2.5 million EOS tokens.
Okay. So do we have any other topics we wanted to cover for today? I'm just looking back at the board. Or any decision to be made. I mean, Lucas had to drop already.
Just maybe one thing, and it's less so for there's no decision. There seems to be a reinvigorated and call for perhaps other chains that did not decide to join the coalition to make application again. So formally, unless one of you has formally received an application, I have not. But I did hear, and I have no idea whether or not this is true, but I did hear that Proton was considering applying to join the coalition again. So no decisions to be made or anything like that, just food for thought. Start thinking about what your position, individual positions are on that, and how we potentially respond should that actually come as a formal application. The last time we talked about this was about two and a half months ago, when there was back and forth with Ultra. We decided not to open the doors again at that time. There's no formal application at the time either, and discussion stopped. But should that be the case again, it seems that people are taking note of the progress we are making as a coalition, and that seems to be of interest to at least Proton from what I hear, and perhaps others.
Should we, maybe I would suggest we try to remember where we stood and how we arrived at that position when we first started the coalition and discussed it. And then maybe we can revisit our stance. Had we well documented the stance and kind of the reasoning behind it, then it would be easier to just go back and say, well, have we changed? Is there a reason we've changed this position or want to now? Yes,
I do believe we documented. I believe we even wrote, I recall writing back to Ultra, but I believe that because we had talked about it a lot during the calls, either within the Miro board, we have some record of specific reasoning or what our position was, as well as then in the channels, for sure we do as well.
Yeah, I would suggest we just kind of go with that process. Like,